Lee Eisenberg developed and produces little anthology series telling stories about lives of immigrants living in the States. I'm Matt Noble here from Gold Derby to ask you, Lee, what surprised you most from the stories in this series?
The breadth of them and the familiarity of them. I'm the son of an immigrant. My dad's from Israel, and so so many of my parents' friends are Israeli, and so I've that was the community that I was most familiar with. And I think that looking at the season as a whole, and also as we're talking about season 2, is the same things. It's, everyone has overbearing parents. Everyone is trying to get a better job. Everyone wants a better home. People want to fall in love. And I think that those universal themes told within the context of these very specific stories, where the details and the texture of different communities really kind of comes through. I think that combination, I thought, was really exciting to explore. And as we keep getting stories in, they're just, I love storytelling so much, and I just hearing these stories of, an Afghan piano prodigy who's working at Popeyes. That's an episode that we're doing in season 2, or a guy who decides to try to build a house on a 8,000 square foot rock. It's like some of these stories you couldn't, if you were in a writer's room, you would never kind of come up with these ideas.
Yeah, and the episode, The Rock, which you just referenced, you wrote that screenplay with Emily Gordon and Kamal Nanjiani, who you developed the series with. Why did you guys write that episode?
I think that was, when we saw the first collection of stories from Epic Magazine, we were kind of talking about, before Apple had greenlit the show, we were talking about what feels kind of quintessentially Little America to us. And this idea of somebody trying to get rid of a rock, and that they just kind of had this indomitable spirit where they just kind of were like, well, I'm not afraid of the rock. We like this idea of kind of thinking of the rock as the enemy of the episode, like the bad guy. And we thought that the episode had a lot of humor. We thought it had a lot of heart. We love this dynamic between this husband and this wife. We love the dynamic between a father and a son, and the son who's a little bit more Americanized than the father, and the son wants to move in with friends and move into an apartment, and the dad doesn't understand why the son doesn't want to live with them anymore. All of those themes were things that we really want to touch on, and it just felt. We also liked that it didn't end with him building his dream house. We also liked that it didn't end with him failing. We liked that the episode kind of ended with an ellipses, that it was, you don't know what's going to happen to him, but you feel like this guy is going to reach his goal.
What was The Rock for you guys in producing this series?
I mean, everything is The Rock. To do a show like this, every episode it's like a mini movie. So we're hiring cultural consultants, we're hiring dialect coaches, we're casting all over the world. We had an episode that cast out of Uganda, and we got an email. We were waiting to get the new videos in, and we got an email that said the village lost its electricity, so we're trying to get that back up, and then we can send you the videos. And the embassy is only open on Fridays, so it might take another week. So then all of a sudden we were scrambling to try finding Ugandan actors for this episode, and we ended up casting like a teacher who lived in Boston. But there were no sets. I worked on The Office for years. The Office, obviously, we built all of that to make it look like an office. With this, we were on location for, I think, every day but one in the 56 days that we shot the show. And so you're constantly scrambling for locations. The show is, so many of the episodes are periods, so it's like getting the costumes right, getting the cars right. There were just so many there were so many moving parts. I mean, the number of emails that I would get per episode was pretty remarkable. And there's so much producing that went along with writing and creating the show.
Yeah. What was the one day that you weren't on location? Where were you that day?
We shot one day. We built a family was living in a garage in the squash episode, and we were struggling with that location, and we were able to build it on a soundstage. So for I think 1 day or 2 days, we shot this one thing, and being on a soundstage is great because there's no there's no sirens when a police car drives by. There's no airplanes where you have to hold for noise. There's no honking. Like you control everything in the soundstage, which is why it's so convenient to do it. And so we got to do that for 1 day out of our 56.
And like with producing, like you've obviously had a lot of experience producing television with The Office, LA Ladies, all that sort of stuff. What's different about producing? You've touched on it a bit already. A series where it's like an anthology series. Every episode has a different cast. Every episode has a completely is a story in a vacuum almost. Like, how do you have to approach that differently as a producer? Yeah.
I think, first and foremost, I'm a writer, and I think that looking at the different stories and thinking how, you wanted each one to feel like its own thing, that you could watch it on its own and enjoy it. And then if you had the opportunity to watch all 8 episodes or watch 3 in a row, that they all felt of a piece while each feeling completely distinctive. Sorry, my dog just walked in.
That's okay.
But I think that was really the key was, how are we touching on similar themes while making each one feel like its own thing? And that was really, so there were a few episodes where we didn't want to tell stories where it was about exceptionalism, where every single immigrant is, at the top of their field or, has a superpower. And we also didn't want to tell stories where they were woe is me. We wanted the stories to feel as human as possible. And that's how we always approached it. And, there's comedy in tragedy, and then things can be tragic in humorous situations. And we never wanted the audience to feel like they knew what was coming, but we also wanted in a half hour to kind of bring them into this world. And whether or not that was a motel in, Green River, Utah, or, 1981 Oklahoma, that in a half hour that you could kind of invest in a character that you'd never seen before, and who often you never saw someone who looks like that as the lead of a show. That was the thing that was most exciting to us.
Yeah. Obviously, the particular time we're living in now, not just in the States, but in the world, but like particularly in the States, with the issue of immigration is quite a hot button issue for a lot of people. Your episode, The Sun, I believe you had to shoot in Canada because not all the actors could get to America because of some of the legislation that was signed. What voice do you think this series can play in the times for America at the moment, but also the world?
I think that I think when we think about immigrants and the way that it's so often talked about in the press, in the media, it feels like this group of people, and the immigrants are going to do this, the immigrants are going to do that, and the immigrants are dangerous, the immigrants are terrorists, the immigrants are, taking our jobs away. And I think the hope, at least with the show, is, that we're all going through the same things. And whether or not that person looks like you see yourself in others. And I think that's something that has been really powerful. I think that people that are Chinese, I think the Chinese episode resonates for them because they're like, oh, that's like my mom, or I remember when my family did this, and oh, you captured that moment really well. But I also think what's really interesting is people from different communities are struck by other episodes. And I think that's what kind of the hope of the show is. I mean, first and foremost, we want to entertain and we want to tell stories that, kind of tick off all the boxes for the things that I'd want to watch. But beyond that, I think that it's just a reminder that we're not as different as I think as we're led to believe. And I think when you see it personified in one person rather than a cluster of 100,000, it feels very different.
What of the stories in season 1, what resonated with you the most?
Which episode?
Yeah. Episode or moment. It could be a moment or a particular scene that resonated with you.
I think it really, it's like, I love all my children. I don't know. I think there's moments within all the episodes that, in the Indian episode, the parents are deported. And this kid is basically going, he believes that if he can qualify for the National Spelling Bee, that he can get his parents back. He'll meet Barbara Bush and he'll get his parents back. And so the whole episode is kind of building to him getting into the National Spelling Bee, qualifying and being one of the top 12 finishers so that he can meet the First Lady. He does all of that. He reads her this devastating letter, and then nothing happens. And so part of it is the way that we did storytelling here, which is on every other show that I've ever worked on, you have a character go down a road, and when you put all these obstacles in front of them, and then they ultimately achieve their goal. In this, none of that mattered. It was like this poor kid versus bureaucracy, and the parents end up coming back at the end, and they've missed, he's gone from being 12 years old to being 20 at the end of the episode. And his first interaction with his parents, so they're sitting down on the mom's kind of taking him in and says, wow, you're a man now. And then they're sitting watching TV at the end of the episode, and she says, have you had a good life? And I felt like, how do you they miss his entire childhood. They miss all of his teenage years. And it's like, how do you answer that question? And it's like that episode ends with, yes, the family's reunited, but also they miss so much of each other's lives. And I thought that was something that really, that moment really stays with me. And then I think we also just kind of held in that shot for a really long time. And I think the audience feels a lot of different emotions in that moment. You're happy and relieved that the family got back together, but you also realize, the journey that you've been on, like what it meant to miss all of that.
Yeah. What this shifting gears just a little bit. How much thought's put into the order of the episodes? Does it? Yeah.
Well, it's funny you asked that. We spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about the order, and two things happened. Number one of the first interviews we got afterwards were like, why did you have two of the young stories in a row to start? Was that intentional? It was like all of the different permutations we thought about, that never occurred to us. So, it's everyone's going to take their own things. And then the other thing we've realized is that people bounce around and they're like, oh, my parents' friends are Syrian, I'm going to watch the Syrian one. And people aren't watching them in the order that we so carefully thought about. And really, like, I've now shown this show to, between screenings and friends and everything, I've seen the episodes in so many different orders. And, as somebody who knows the show better than anyone, there's probably like different things that I would say like, oh, I think you should watch this episode before that episode. But I don't think anyone else is thinking of it in that way at all. And I think that I knock on wood, and I'm now, working on season 2. I really think I'm so proud of the episodes that we did in season 1.
Yeah. That's fantastic. What's it like working with Kamal and Emily?
Oh, they're great. I've known them for years, and I've always been a huge fan. I thought The Big Sick was just such a lovely, tonally. I just thought, that movie has comedy. I got choked up. I love the characters. I love the dialogue, and so I was just always such a fan of it. And we were always really friendly. Kamal and I developed something else together years ago. And we, it was one of these things where, you start putting together, like, who do I want to work with on this project? And I called Alan Yang, who had created Master of None, and said, hey, I have the show, and here's what it looks like. And he said, yep, I'm in. I called Camille and Emily and said the same thing. I took them to dinner. A few days later, they said they're in. And so, it's, you know, you hear all these stories in Hollywood of people, you know, I got my 4th choice for this thing. I got my 5th choice for this. And for me, with this project, everyone that I asked in that initial go round said yes. So I feel so fortunate I'm working with my dream team.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Just quickly, is there a moment? Oh no, wait.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep. I'm good. I'm good till 2:40.
Oh, look at you. So we've got Lee, I'm just going to quickly ask, do you have a favorite moment from The Office? Something you when you look back on your time there?
You know, I wrote this episode with my writing partner, Gene Snitsky, called The Dinner Party, that got nominated for an Emmy. And there's a scene in it where Michael talks about his vasectomy, and then how he got the vasectomy, then he undid the vasectomy, then he got it again, and then he undid it. And the way that Steve performs that scene, it is so funny. I remember being on set and just like seeing the anguish in this man and thinking about the number of surgeries he's had because he's so desperate to have kids, and he's with a woman who's ambivalent about it. And that just being on set for that episode generally is kind of the highlight of my career. And the table read for that episode. But that moment in particular, I just remember, I mean, you're in Video Village watching it, and you're just praying that you're not the one to start laughing and ruin the take. That was the goal.
It's incredible how often that episode comes up with
it
cast
really is.
and like everything. Like, yeah, an episode that like is like doesn't take place much in The Office at all. Like, yeah, it's in like.
Well, that was kind of part. I mean, that was the thing that drew us to it was this idea of how do you tell office stories, and an office story is your boss invites you over for dinner, and then of course it completely goes off the rails. But I think that the idea, it was always fun, and again, that was season 4. You're at that point, you're 70 episodes in or whatever you're in, 60 episodes. And this idea that like, how do you kind of keep reinventing this thing, but still keeping it claustrophobic like The Office set. That was something that was really, that was fun to work on.
Yeah, season 2, like season 1 was based off story. By the way, I'm going back to Little America now. Season 1 was based, and we're going to finish with this question. Season 1 was based off stories from the magazine articles and things like that. Season 2, you had to find new stories, or there's still.
There are a few that were from that original batch. And we just had more than Apple ordered 8 episodes in the first season. And we kind of feel like that's the right amount for the show. And so we had a few that were left over from last year that we loved, and they didn't fit in for whatever reason. So those are a few of them. And then, I mean, we get stories from everywhere. There's a story. So there's a Little America book now. And so we've been pulling from there. And I mean, I talked to all my Uber drivers, and, one of the stories that's in the book, I got from an Uber driver. He told me this crazy story about when he first was in the United States, and all of his friends left, and he couldn't find his passport. So he got to the airport, and they said you have to go to the embassy, and he didn't speak English, and he got lost. And then they thought the FBI stopped him, and he had this crazy 24 hours in New York City. And I said, can I get your card? And I took his card, and I passed it along to our researchers. And then 6 months later, they said, "Oh, by the way, your Uber driver, Marianne, he's been great." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's incredible!" So I was talking to my dad about doing his story this year. Some of the other writers talking to their parents, and we just collect the stories from everywhere. And so, a good story is a good story. And I mean, we have, as the show has come out, we've been getting more incoming calls of people, whether or not they're in Hollywood or not, saying, "Hey, I have a story that I think might be interesting for your show."
Fantastic. No better place in LA to get a story from an Uber driver, because you can be in that Uber for quite a while.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lee, thank you so much for chatting with us today. All the best for the Emmy Awards that are coming up, and people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com for more interviews and to make your Emmy predictions, where you can compete against the best editors, experts, and users from around the world. Thank you so much, Lee. It was great to chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope everyone stays safe.